A scientist creates a device that copies a person's mind to allow them to exist after death. Instead of using this to save others, he sees his chance to pursue his brother's wife. The LEM project determines that a person is made up of their memories and consciousness. Their memories are the data that makes the human unique, while their consciousness processes these data to function. With this, LM created a way to digitize memories using a neuroconnector that transfers data from the human brain. Its neural network will then recreate the consciousness to process this memory, practically recreating the mind. This project was created by David, the CEO of the laboratory, his wife, Vera, the neurosurgeon who developed the neuroconnector, and David's brother, Anton, who created the neural network. The trio reviews their presentation for this project, but Anton thinks they shouldn't imply that they're recreating human consciousness. Instead, they only copied memories and haven't confirmed if they can copy someone's consciousness. With this, he suggests postponing the presentation. Later at his lab, Vera reminds Anton that they've had successful tests, so she's sure they can replicate human consciousness. However, he points out that when they copied the memories of a lab rat, the replica started suppressing new responses. This makes it difficult for them to predict new thoughts created by the replicas. Still, David points out that they've delayed the presentation 3 times already. If they can't show their work soon, they won't have investors to continue the project with. However, Anton worries about Vera, who's volunteered to be the first human test subject. Outside, as investors for their project arrive, dozens of people are protesting against the idea of copying human consciousness. As one security officer exits to deal with it, a man in a cap slips into the building undetected. Meanwhile, a reporter notices Andre among the investors interested in the project. The man is known for buying and reselling assets that are on the brink of collapse, so this might mean bad luck for the LEM project. The trio soon meets the media, but the man in a cap triggers a smoke bomb. Vera later helps Anton clean up after getting sprayed by the smoke bomb. Despite the event, David later begins the presentation. He promises investors that they'll be able to clone human minds, giving deceased loved ones another chance. He then presents Anton and Vera as they prepare to clone the woman's mind. As soon as they begin, however, the power fails. David desperately tries to save the presentation, but people start leaving. With their presentation a disaster, David sarcastically thanks Anton for convincing their investors to drop them, but the man reminds him that he warned that they weren't ready. Just then, Andre visits the group and offers to pay for everything they need to proceed. Stunned by the offer, the group hesitates, more so given his reputation. With that, he leaves, telling them to contact him when they've decided. Anton spends the rest of the night figuring out what went wrong. To his surprise, his computer prompts him that copying Vera's mind was successful with a 25% stabilization rate. He then accesses the replica, and it responds to him, asking him where she is. Anton says that she's somewhere they call the vault. However, the replica struggles to recall memories, and when she asks if he's her husband, Anton pauses before saying yes. The memory then attempts to create images to see him, but when she touches his virtual replica, Anton jolts awake at the lab. He then goes to the computer and finds that the stabilization increased to 31%. In the morning, Vera finds her husband reading Andre's proposal. The man is worried that Andre included loopholes, like making them promise their firstborn to him. Vera jokes that to do this, they have to make one first. However, David believes they're too busy to have a child now. During this, a priest acknowledges his flock's effort during the protest, but he berates Ignat for harming people after he threw the smoke bomb. Ignat argues that the scientist needed to be stopped, but the priest assures his flock that they failed to copy the soul, so everyone will know that God won't allow this blasphemy. Still, Ignat insists on destroying their machine. He believes that no God will allow this evil or forgive humans who create such devilish experiments. This means that God has abandoned them, and he's the only one who stands against the devil. Later on, Anton's assistant, Sasha, finds him asleep by his computer. When she glances at his monitor, her eyes widen. Meanwhile, David and Vera meet with Andre, who reveals that he's willing to pay for their project since his daughter Zoya is sick. He hopes that they can replicate her and allow her to live on. Andre admits that Zoya is his only family since his wife died in childbirth. He comments that since Vera and David don't have children, he doesn't think they can sympathize with him. However, after striving for power and money, he realized that they're not his legacy, but his child. Zoya has been sick her whole life and medicine can't help her anymore, so he's become desperate. David wonders what'll happen if they fail to replicate Zoya. Andre merely responds that his daughter is his whole world, so he's ready to do anything for her. He then asks what'll happen to Zoya if they succeed. Vera admits that, at the beginning, the replica wouldn't be able to determine which memories are important and which ones aren't. Meanwhile, Anton asks Sasha not to tell anyone that they replicated Vera until they reach 85% stability, since things could still go wrong. As part of the process, they store the replica in the vault, where Anton would guide it to process the memories. In theory, once it reaches 85% stability, the replica will recognize itself as a full-fledged personality. That night, the replica's stability is at 40%. Anton visits her in the vault, which has now constructed the replicated Vera and a house for her to stay in. She's happy to see Anton, but he warns her that they can't touch since he's not part of her code. Instead, he wants to trace her memories back to how they met. Vera recalls that they met at an institute, though she remembers that someone else was with them. She asks who it is, but Anton urges her to recall it on her own. However, when Vera insists on him telling her, the place goes dark, suggesting that she's destabilizing. With that, Anton exits the vault and sees her stability rate lowered to 32%. He later meets David and Vera, who tell him about Zoya. To their surprise, he agrees that they can help the girl. In contrast, David is hesitant as he's suspicious about attaching Andre to it. Anton explains that they might have failed before, since they used a neural network that previously stored another replica, so they can just build a new one for Zoya. Though it took 4 years to build the first network, Anton assumes that they can do it within weeks, now that they know how to, and David has the resources. With this, the trio signs Andre's contract. Later on, Anton invites Vera to his office and asks how he would know if a woman likes him. Vera assumes that he's talking about Sasha, which surprises Anton. Using this angle, he asks Vera what clues he should see if Sasha's interest in him becomes serious. He segues this to asking about how she and David got together, so Vera shares that they met when she accidentally attended Anton's lecture at the university. David quickly got interested in her and pursued her until he won her over. Anton doesn't remember Vera attending his lecture, and the woman thinks he was probably paying attention to something else back then. When Anton visits the replica in the vault, he finds her crying. He assures her that he only left because he was afraid that he was hurting her. Now, he wants to remind her how they met. He retells the story about Vera attending his lecture, and the replica imagines this. She imagines hearing about Anton from her peers, which led to her being interested in him. Anton then lies that he noticed her in his class right away, while David left the lecture since he had work. He claims that he talked to Vera throughout that day since he was immediately drawn to her. Just then, she takes a book from a shelf and finds a set of tickets inside. She asks if she and Anton ever went to arcades, and he says no. However, Vera recalls going to a shopping center with her father where she played arcade games. She enjoys this memory, and Anton compliments her for recalling it on her own. He soon exits the vault and sees that the stability rate increased to 48%. The next day, Ignat arrives at the building but is refused at the lobby. Just then, he notices a maintenance worker exiting. Meanwhile, Vera documents Zoya's room, explaining to the girl that the details will help create the framework for the replica to copy her consciousness. To help, Zoya shows her a postcard her mother left behind. Noticing the girl's grief, Vera sympathizes with her. She also grew up without her mother, and when her father got sick, she had to take on a responsibility she didn't understand. Now that she's grown up, she knows what she can do and how to do it. This gives Zoya hope that she still has a future, so she embraces the woman. That night, Anton takes Vera to an arcade. He also uses the chance to ask her if a replica can stabilize using a false memory. Vera says yes, since a false memory would be data like the real ones. This is why the subject's loved one needs to guide the replica. Anton then orders ice cream with popcorn for them. This surprises Vera since this was her childhood favorite, not knowing that Anton learned this through her replica. On another day, Anton visits Vera's replica, who now wonders why she's in the vault. He then lies that on the day of the presentation, a bomb killed her and David. Because of this, her consciousness is all he has left of her. During this, Ignat lands a job as a maintenance worker at their building. As the days go on, Vera spends more time with Zoya to understand her better, then relays the information to Anton so he can create her neural network. During this, David handles the business side. This has the married couple spending less time with each other. Eventually, both Zoya and Andre are implanted with their neuroconnectors to allow the father to be her replica's guide. Meanwhile, Ignat infiltrates the building, but struggles to gain access to their laboratory. One day, Anton finds Vera's replica sorting through vinyl albums since she's struggling to remember a song. She notes that it's connected to her father, and since she can't remember him, she wants to hear the song to help her. Anton instructs her to meditate to let the memory come to her. This helps her remember her childhood home, and how her father always made time to ask about her day and tell her about his. During these conversations, he played a song. Then, when he got sick, she played the song for him until the end. Finally, she recalls the song, so the replica searches for the vinyl and plays it. Anton later shows this improvement to Sasha, who thinks it's time to tell the others. However, he wants to make sure it works first since their next subject is a girl. Meanwhile, Zoya asks Vera if they can try replicating her again if they fail at first, and Vera admits that they might not be able to. This disappoints Zoya since she's afraid of what'll happen to her father if she's gone. The next day, David reports to Andre that they're still working on Zoya's replication, admitting that they can't rush this. However, Andre reminds him that his daughter is dying, and if they can't let her live, he can't guarantee everyone else's future. That evening, Ignat manages to swipe a keycard from Sasha. Meanwhile, Anton visits the replica and sees that she's changed the setting to the home she remembers. To make it seem that he lived with her in this house, he comments that small details are different, but Vera asserts that she remembers it right. She also has a replica of Vera's pet rabbit, but asks Anton what its name is. Anton doesn't know, so he comments that it's not important. Vera questions why he gets to decide what's important for her to remember. Anton claims that he's being careful since her and David's deaths were his fault. If they cannot stabilize her consciousness, things could go wrong, and he's afraid of losing her completely. Dismissively, the replica assures him that she believes him. Later, Vera reports to the men that Zoya's condition is getting worse, so Anton offers to help her. However, a stressed David orders him to focus on his job so they can replicate her. Anton claims he needs more time, defending that he and Vera are working hard. Despite this, David sarcastically comments that it must be difficult to tell a dying girl not to have her father kill them. This hurts Vera, so she storms off. Anton goes after her and tries to defend his brother. However, Vera asserts that Zoya's safety is their responsibility. With this, Anton sympathizes with how Zoya's condition must remind her of her father's. But Vera questions how he knows this. Dodging the question, he just assures her that Zoya's story will be different from her father's. Latching onto this, Vera embraces Anton. Sasha sees this, so she asks Anton to go to the lab with her. She shows that Vera's replica is stabilizing at 75%, so she suggests telling the others. Again, Anton wants to delay it, insisting on waiting for 100% stability. Recalling that Sasha has feelings for him, he switches tactics and lets her decide if she wants to report this or not. Anton visits the vault again where the replica has switched back to the old apartment. The replica notes that she remembers almost everything, but can't recall how they made love. She goes to Anton, but the man reminds her that they can't touch. Instead, she lets him watch her satisfy herself. This tempts Anton, so he reaches out. However, the replica recalls making love to David instead. Anton is ejected out of the vault as the replica is starting to remember the truth. Just then, Sasha approaches as she's decided to trust his judgment. Troubled with his emotions, Anton suddenly kisses Sasha, and this leads to them having an intimate time. Ignat uses the keycard in time to see this but backs away, deciding to postpone his plans. The next day, Zoya faints, and they struggle to revive her. Thankfully, she regains consciousness later on while her father is on her side. Andre expresses guilt that he failed to save her, but Zoya assures him that he's been the best father. She also promises that she won't leave him like her mother did. That night, Vera reports to David that Zoya isn't doing well. Her neural network is already built, so all they're waiting for is Anton's work. However, Vera comments on how her husband seems indifferent about their situation and Zoya's. David defends that he doesn't have the luxury of worrying about the subject since he has to focus on the task. This only disappoints his wife, so she leaves. Anton later returns to the vault and finds it glitching despite the replica's stabilization reaching 91%. Sasha arrives to discuss their relationship and work. However, the stressed man reminds her that this is his project, not theirs. If he decides to report the progress or delete the replica, it's up to him. Sasha discourages him from deleting it, but Anton asserts that, as a scientist, he he can't be constrained by ethical boundaries. And so, he refuses to announce that he's copied his sister-in-law's mind and experimented on it so that he could help an oligarch's daughter while thousands of other children are left helpless. With this in mind, he decides to delete the replica. Before he can, Vera arrives, worried that Zoya is getting worse. Sasha then witnesses Anton suddenly becoming empathetic, confirming his feelings for his sister-in-law. Desperate to give her hope, Anton finally reveals that his experiment works, but claims that he only found out just now. With this, he promises to replicate Zoya tomorrow. This makes Vera happy, so she embraces him. Anton then suggests that she get some rest, so he leads her out the door. However, he begins the deletion process of Vera's replica before following her. While David struggles to contact both Vera and Anton, Sasha ponders over canceling the deletion. During this, the replica finally recalls that David is her husband, and that they didn't die on the day of the presentation. Soon, David calls Sasha, who tells him what happened. Elsewhere, Anton takes Vera to his home to rest. She starts to regret this, only for Anton to play her father's song, making her stay. The emotional woman then seeks comfort in his arms, even kissing him. Unbeknownst to them, David has entered the vault where he confirms that Anton told the replica that he's her husband. Afraid that he is losing his real wife to Anton, David confesses his feelings for her. The replica assures him that the real Vera knows he loves her, and that she loves him too. With this, David asks what he can do for her, and the replica asks to be deleted. When he wakes up, David heads to Anton's house and tells Vera that Andrei wants to replicate Zoya now. However, he tells Anton to stay behind and let Sasha assist. He acknowledges that things could have happened between his wife and brother, but he doesn't blame Vera since Anton used her replica and convinced it that he was her husband to get to her. Anton tries to defend that he was doing his job, but Vera becomes disgusted. She then fetches her things and kisses her husband before heading off to the lab, leaving the brothers alone. Despite his rage, David decides that he still has his wife, and they can delete the copy he made of her. Anton points out that everything David has was because of him. This was his project initially, and David wouldn't have met Vera if she hadn't attended his lecture. He even claims that his brother doesn't truly know Vera, apart from what she wasn't afraid to tell him. He believes he knows the woman better since David doesn't care about anything but the business. Deciding to deal with him later, Anton leaves. Soon, Zoya is prepped for the replication. During this, Anton goes to his office to restart the deletion, but Ignat arrives with a gun. He accuses the scientist of stealing a person's soul with his machine. Just then, the door opens, and Ignat instinctively shoots, killing Sasha. Afraid, Anton promises Ignat that he'll delete everything. He even tells him that his brother is about to copy a little girl, and still, Ignat shoots him. Soon, Ignat infiltrates the other lab and shoots Zoya's doctor and her neural network. He stops when he sees Zoya, and David uses the chance to pummel him. However, he soon gets shot, and Ignat holds Vera at gunpoint. Fortunately, a wounded Andrei manages to get his gun and kill the attacker. Vera rushes to her husband while Anton uploads his mind into her replica's vault. He begs her to believe him, not David. He then pulls her to him, now able to touch her since he's now a replica too. When he kisses her, however, Vera tells him to stay away. Still, Anton confesses his feelings and desperately tries to apologize. However, Vera locks him into a room, trapping him in a portion of her vault that serves as his prison. In the real world, Vera and David take Zoya to Anton's lab to use his machine, only to find his dead body on it. David pushes down his grief to help Vera upload herself and Zoya. Vera proceeds into the vault where she meets her replica. She tells her about Zoya, and since Ignat shot her neural network, Vera asks her replica to let them store the girl in hers, promising that she'll love her as much as she did. The replica accepts, so Vera wakes up and transfers Zoya's consciousness into the vault. Zoya soon wakes up to see Vera's replica, whom she calls Mother. In this virtual world, the replica finally gives Zoya a second chance in life, one where she's free from sickness.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.